Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Prabhupada Jaya 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 Gurudev Jaya Gurudev Jaya Gurudev Srila Gurudev Jaya Gurudev Jaya Gurudev Jaya Gurudev Srila Gurudev Jayo Vishnupad Paramhams Parivrajaka Pastoda Srimad Srila Abhayacharnavind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavind Ki Jai Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Shambhadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shri Jaya Patahari Swami Dinamani. Namo Jara Padayana Tagapa Padayana Gaura Gatamadayana Nagaragranta. Shambhadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Dinamani. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Prashasi Deshadarine. Jai. Today we are reading from Canto 2, the Cosmic Manifestation. Chapter 10, Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. Today we are in ninja form. We are all ninjas. Pujari is also ninja today. So we'll be... Prabhu, yesterday, I think he did text number 30 as well, right? Not sure? Alright, so we'll do 30 and 31 because I think he did 30 yesterday because I was seeing it in YouTube. I think he did 30. But okay, we'll do 30 and 31. Alright, so we'll start with 30. Nidhiya soratma mayam Nidhiya soratma mayam Hridayam nirabhidyata Hridayam nirabhidyata Tato manas chandraiti Tato manas chandraiti Sankalpa kama evacha Sankalpa kama evacha Nidhiya soratma mayam Nidhiya soratma mayam Hridayam nirabhidyata Hridayam hita Tato manas chandra iti Tato manas chandra iti Sankalpa kama evacha Sankalpa kama evacha Vaishnava Nidhiya soratma mayam Hridayam nirabhidyata Tato manas chandra iti Sankalpa kama evacha. Word for word. Nidhiya so. Being desirous to know. Atma mayam. Own energy. Hridayam. The location of the mind. Nirabhidyata. Was manifested. Tataha. Thereafter. Manaha. The mind. Chandra, the controlling deity of the mind, the moon. Iti, thus, sankalpaha, determination, kamaha, desire, eva, as much as, cha, also. Translation purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Chanarvind Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. When there was a desire to think about the activities of his own energy, then the heart, the seat of the mind, the moon, determination, and all desire became manifested. Purport. The heart of every living entity is the seat of the Supersoul, Paramatma, a plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Without his presence, the living entity cannot get into the working energy according to his past deeds. The living entities who are conditioned in the material world are manifested in the creation in terms of respective inclinations inherent in them, and the requisite material body is offered to each and every one of them by the material energy under the direction of the Supersoul. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita 9.10. When therefore the Supersoul is situated in the heart of the conditioned soul, the requisite mind is manifested in the conditioned soul, and he becomes conscious of his occupation as one is conscious of his duties after waking up from slumber. Therefore, the material mind of the living entity develops when the Supersoul sits on his heart, after which the mind, the controlling deity moon, and then the activities of the mind, namely thinking, feeling, and willing, all take place. The activities of the mind cannot begin without the manifestation of the heart, and the heart becomes manifested when the Lord wants to see the activities of the material creation. Jai. Now we'll do text number 31 as it. Tvakcharmamam sarudhira medo. Oh, sorry. Medo majhasi dhatava bhumirapte jomaya shapta prano vyomam bhuvayubhi. Translation. The 7 elements of the body, namely the thin layer of the skin itself, the flesh, blood, fat, marrow, and bone, are all made of earth, water, and fire, whereas the life breath is produced by the sky, water, and air. Purport. Construction of the whole material world is prominently made by 3 elements, namely earth, water, and fire. But the living force is produced by sky, air, and water. So water is the common element in both the gross and subtle forms of all material creation. And it should be noted herewith that due to necessity, water being most prominent in the material creation is the principal element of all the 5. This material body is thus an embodiment of the 5 elements, and the gross manifestations is perceived because of the 3. Namely earth, water, and fire. Sensations of touch are perceived due to the thin layer of the skin, and bone is as good as hard stone. The breathing air of life is produced of sky, air, and water, and therefore open air, regular bath, and ample space in which to live are favorable for healthy vitality. Fresh produce from the earth, like grains and vegetables, as well as fresh water and heat, is good for the upkeep of the gross body. Jai, fired up. So, I am almost certain Prabhu did text number 30, but we will touch on it. So in text number 30, what we are seeing so far is we are seeing the templates coming out from Lord Vishnu's desires. Now in text number 30, the aspect of mind is brought out. And the idea of bringing out the aspect of mind is to bring out the concept of controlling. So far we have been looking at the concept of enjoyment. So when Krishna says, Krishna desired this, this came out. Krishna desired this, this came out. And so what happens is that this idea of enjoying, and then from the enjoyment something producing, right? That is coming originally from Lord Vishnu, and then we are taking those principles on. So aham bhogi, I am the enjoyer. So then I am using my senses to enjoy the world. Like, oh, nice touch, nice voice, nice listening, good music. Nowadays, buying headphones is very big, especially because of, everyone's working from home. So everyone has headphones on, everybody, right? The headphone market is shot through the roof. So listening. So we will see that we all are enjoying this world, every one of us, right? We are fully engaged in the enjoyment of this world. Here from text 30 onwards, we are going to see the principle of controlling coming out. Now, Ishwaro Aham. So the two issues we have, not issues, the two principles because of which we land on this material world, or the Karana Sharira. Right? Is Ishwaro aham, aham bhogi. So the bhogi part is coming out, now the controlling part is going to come out. Okay? So the first principle that comes out from that is the mind. So adhyatma, the mind becomes the principle. Right? And driving the mind is your intelligence. Right? Your intelligence drives the mind. So once the intelligence forms, the mind gets under control. Okay? And then once the mind is there, all the senses follow the mind. So that's the order. Intelligence, mind, and then the senses. Now mind is a product of mode of goodness. So by default, it is a good thing, your mind. When we see the qualities of the mind, it is always active. So this is all Brahmanical qualities. So if you're a Brahmana, you will have these qualities. You're always active, you're always functioning. So the mind has all of these qualities because they are all coming from mode of goodness. Always active, very sharp, quick to calculate. Right? This is all Brahmanical qualities. So because it's from mode of goodness. Now the intelligence, because it is coming from passion, the intelligence can dull the mind. That is why the intelligence has 3 stages, right? This is explained in Canto 11 of Srimad Bhagavatam. The 3 stages of the intelligence is a deep sleep, dream state, and fully awake. Okay, the 3 stages. So in deep sleep, Krishna is telling Uddhava that in deep sleep the intelligence is completely bewildered, and so then the mind is fully bewildered. In dream state, there is an opportunity. So we are all in dream state right now. Like, okay, yes, we see Radha Gopinath, but we see the material world as well. We see both. Oh, Radha Gopinath, you're so beautiful, but the material world is also beautiful. Like, you're seeing both. So we're in dream state. Then when you're fully awake, then you only see Radha Gopinath. Right? So then that's the only concept. So that becomes the strength of the intelligence, based on which the mind is now forming. And it is interesting to see that the seat of the mind is the heart. Usually in psychology, and whenever these guys try to assess through a psychological view how you're doing, they put probes on the brain. But that's not where the mind is. The psychological concept of the mind is actually in the heart. So one has to actually judge the heart of the person. And this is hard to do. And here it is being explained that Srila Prabhupada so beautifully writes in the purport that the heart is formed, and in the heart comes the super soul. When the super soul forms, the mind is now attracted. So for the mind, because mind is in mode of goodness, right? The mind has to function in a place of goodness, and that is the heart. And Paramatma lives there. And because Paramatma is there, he is Shuddha Sattva. He is the transcendental goodness. So he is Shuddha Sattva. So the mind is attached there, and it is mode of goodness, so it now functions. So this, all of this attaches very nicely here. Now in text number 31, the interesting concept of building a boundary is being described. How the 7 elements form, and the 7 elements are there to build a boundary. And what I mean by boundary is to build a state where you can say that this is my possession. So mamata, that which is mine. Okay, and then ahankar. So here we are talking explicitly of the mamata. We are talking about all the possessions that we can have, starting with this body. Right? And this idea of building a boundary is very important. The reason why why this aspect of building a boundary is important is we have to start seeing that there is nothing in this material world that we can perceive that does not have a form. Usually you will see Mayavad philosophers. I was in university. I was talking to a person. He was into impersonalism. And I was telling him, I said, from your own practical experience, can you name one thing that doesn't have form? One thing. Anything. It doesn't have form. Even when you look at the map of the world, you see, this is Pacific Ocean, this is Atlantic Ocean. Now you are thinking, there's just a pile of water thrown on the ground. Imagine I take this glass of water and I pour it here. And when I pour this water, I tell, okay, Prabhu, this is the Atlantic Ocean and this is the Pacific Ocean. You'll be like, it doesn't seem to make any sense. But that's exactly how the world works. That although there is this pile of water thrown, this water, the formulation of this water has individual form. And so, even the most subtle form, and here we are talking, the most subtle here is ether or sky. Srila Prabhupada uses the words interchangeably, ether and sky. Even ether and sky has form. And its form is so specific that we, in our education system, we are taught that if we get a radio wave and we hit something and it bounces back, we know this is the form that it has. When we see pictures of, the nebula or the solar system, all of that is coming back from the ether responding back. And this idea that even ether has form is interesting. And so in text number 31, we see this principle of what is a boundary and what is a form. So here the material formations are now building our body, right? And the material formations are being built using the basic elements. And Srila Prabhupada so beautifully points this out in this text, that water is the binding principle between gross and subtle. Right? So the gross and subtle, the binding principle becomes water. And then so you will see that generally in worship, right, whenever we have to worship, why water is used for purity. Right? So, whenever the pujari has to purify himself, why does he use water to purify himself? The reason we use water is because water is both gross and subtle. It has both principles. And because it has both principles, when you say Om Keshavaye Namaha Narayanaye Namaha Madhavaye Namaha, when you do those three, both the gross and subtle is being purified. And so that aspect, right, when we start appreciating, we'll start seeing why, now nobody does it, but traditionally, even South India they do. When they sit down for prasadam, and they put a banana leaf, you will see the people take water and then they pour water around. And sometimes they even put water in the banana leaf and they rub it. And that is the rationale for using water. Is sometimes we may be thinking water is only a gross concept, like it's a washing machine. Like you use water and you clean. No, it is also subtle. Both gross and subtle. And so this midpoint of using water becomes very interesting. Also, the intriguing aspect is that this midpoint of water is fundamental in this material universe. We have the Garbhodakshay ocean. So that is an ocean, the embryonic fluid. And this embryonic fluid is both gross and subtle. Right? And so we actually see that in the mother's womb, when the embryonic fluid exists, similarly, so the embryonic fluid in the womb of a mother acts in a way that the embryonic fluid in the Garbhoka ocean works. In a similar construct, where the mother and father is Lord Vishnu himself, Mata Dhata Pitamaha, right? So Lord Vishnu is lying down. This embryonic fluid is both gross and subtle. And so the gross form, the subtle form goes and creates the gross. So we see this even in the creation of the baby. So the embryonic fluid is subtle in nature, and then through all of its combinations, it then starts building the body. It starts building the gross. So Srila Prabhupada here in text number 31, he's bringing this aspect out about how this concept of fluid, of fluidity, right, liquid, aqua, these concepts are actually the midpoint of both gross and subtle. So usually when people are swimming, when you are swimming, you have a sensation of floating. Right? You have that sensation of floating. So that is the subtle feeling. And even when the astronauts, they are practicing, their being in space, they will go underwater to get the practice of being in space. The reason why they do that is that the water brings out that subtle principle. So when they actually go into space, where there's ether is completely subtle, right? So then that feeling, they can get that feeling, right? So this aspect of water actually being subtle, and the in-between point is what Srila Prabhupada is touching on. And he also brings out this important aspect that water is plentiful in the material world. Like plentiful, right? The earth is virtually 70% water. Our body is 80, like much bigger number of percentage of water. And also when in Canto 5, when we'll be reading all the principles, we will see this idea of this ocean, and multiple oceans being discussed. And so whenever we see this concept of ocean, we have to understand that all of these are subtle forms, right? And so that's what Srila Prabhupada is touching on this out here. Now, this subtle form, right, creates or brings the bridging point to build a gross, and the gross forms the boundary. right? So think of this as, let's say you buy a property. So, nowadays in Sydney, a lot of subdivisions are happening. So you go out to the west and you see a big subdivision, right? You go to Rouse Hill or Castle Hill or in that area, a lot of subdivisions are happening. So there is actually a big pile of land. Then what you do is they build out subdivisions and then you go buy the land. When you buy the land, you'll start building the boundary. So this is building the thin layer of skin. Now once we build the boundary, we then start building the bone, the flesh, the blood, the fat, the marrow. Basically we build a house. Right? And once we build a house in the land, okay, then we go and live in that house. So that is exactly how the creation of this physical body takes place. Usually when we talk to, I had a chance to talk to someone who's an anthropologist. So an anthropologist is somebody who studies human behavior. And of course, because they study that, they study how people react, humans react, and anthropologists are the ones that actually give a lot of feedback to social media. And that's how they create all these tracking. Like for each and every one of us, they have 3,000 data points. Like how do you think, how do you behave? So they have these 3,000 data points. All of this is coming through the study of anthropology. And so this anthropologist, I was just talking to them, and then I was just explaining how in Srimad Bhagavatam there is actually rationale given of why the senses form. Like why? So he was explaining that yes, science also explains it. So I was asking him. I said, see, if there is a single cell organism, according to your scientific nature, and that single cell organism, multiplied and became a multicellular organism. What inspired a bacteria, a single cell organism, to understand that there is a concept called seeing and that I must see? There's a concept of smelling and therefore I must smell. There's a concept of touching and therefore I must touch. So where have these concepts come from? And what inspired a bacteria to understand, oh, I must see, I must feel, I must smell, I must touch, I must taste? So where is that inspiration? So of course he was saying that no, that is all, it just happened. I'm like, yeah, but what we are understanding from Srimad Bhagavatam, that it didn't just happen. That it is Krishna's desire, and all of these sense objects and these, tanmatras are there. And so therefore the body is acting in accordance to how Krishna is desiring it. Right? So this is all Krishna's desire. The fact that I am seeing, the fact that I am tasting, the fact that I am smelling, these different sensory objects, these are actually all templates coming out because Krishna likes that. And because that is the case, we will see that in our deity worship, all these 5 concepts come out. That when we, the idea of Krishna likes to see, so whenever there is festival, we encourage devotees, they should dress nicely. Right? You should dress very nicely when you come in front of the deities, because Krishna likes to see. Krishna likes to smell. So we always offer, incense, fragrance, flowers. Krishna likes to drink. So you see a lot of, water pots there with Krishna. And of course, devotees cook a lot for Krishna. And same for eating, taste, touch. So Krishna likes all of these things. So in our deity worship, we bring these aspects out. Because by bringing these aspects out, we have a clear boundary of who Krishna is, what he likes to do, and then how we sit into that. And then once this boundary is formed, once this house is formed, the prana is the life air, right? This life air is brought in and it settles there. And so the prana, it is actually sitting on sky, water and air. And that is why in Ayurveda, there is a lot of focus on this, how one breathes. Because one's Ayu, age, is related to Vayu, the air. So the two come together. So that's why Ayurveda. Ayurveda means how one can have a good life. Like one's age, for whatever period one has to live, how one can live it in a healthy manner. Right? So this prana and how to compose the prana is what pretty much Ayurveda is focused on. Its focus is to make sure that the 49 airs within our body are balanced. So, usually in Ayurveda, if you ever go for treatment, they will try to look at your blood pressure. So the principle is working off airs. Yep. And so this is a prana. And so because the prana then enters the body, all right, and then all other objects start getting attached. So first we have the boundary, then the person comes in, and then all sensory pleasures come in. So you pretty much see exactly this is how we build our house. We have a house, we move in, then we start building, our sensory pleasures into that house. We pick pictures, multiple ways. So yeah, that is it. It's 8:25. So yeah, this is a simple shloka, but these are very pertinent, especially when we are discussing, if you are sometimes in an academic, conversation somehow, somewhere, you can actually use these concepts that are being told in Srimad Bhagavatam and discuss with people, and you will actually see that we are actually coming from a position of strength. We're not coming from a position of weakness. You will actually see this position of weakness in pretty much all other religions, Christianity, Buddhism, Jainism. You will see this principle of weakness. They're not able to describe how the thing is working. Do you know right now in Christianity, there is an acceptance even by the Pope of the concept of what is this thing called? The survivorship. I forgot, mutation. That there was a bacteria, then there was dinosaurs, and then humans came. So there's a general acceptance by the church now that mutation did happen, right? Because they have no position of strength to come from. Whereas we're like, there is no mutation. Humans have always been there. The first person who was born was human. Why? Because he's coming from someone who has a human Manushya form. That is Krishna. Right, so we are a replicated template of Krishna. So there is no concept that I came from a single cell organism. One can say that one's birth does happen like that you're a zygote, and then you multiply, and you become this big. So that aspect we accept, but not in the way the science is explaining it today of, over time, single cell became multiple cell, and this happened over, billions and billions of years. That nonsense we don't agree on. But yeah, that is it. 30 and 31, I think we'll update that to say 30 and 31. So yeah, Prabhu, you want to share something? Jai. Oh, sorry.
With respect to Hindu solar and multisolar organisms, we see that our form it was split into two, it becomes two organisms.
Okay.
How can we understand the
So through perspiration, so it is one of the principles of giving birth. So you'll see that concept, even Bhagavatam explain egg. I forgot that one of them is perspiration. So yes, you can give birth like that. Yes, that's correct.
If the body is split,
Yes.
it is a new organism.
Yes.
Some other living entity takes
It takes over that. Yes, correct. And so that concept is also there in Bhagavatam about how perspiration, through the skin perspiration and all, you can split. Yes, that is correct. Jai. Granthra Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Nitai Gaur Premanande, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare